Dealing with some of the difficult questions in an interview is obviously incredibly important, and how you handle those questions will probably make the difference between getting the job or not.
If it's a bad hire, that will reflect very badly on me.
What are your strengths and weaknesses? How would you describe yourself are going to appear in your interview? However contrived it may seem, you need to think of your answers.
If you can demonstrate to prospective employer that you are actually aware of your weaknesses and then demonstrate effort that you're putting in to overcome them, or effort you're prepared to put in to overcome those weaknesses, then that's something they're interested in seeing.
It's important to recognise everybody in life has had failures, and it's a very tough interviewer and a tough process that wouldn't acknowledge those. Once again, keep them in proportion. We don't want our failures to be bigger than our successes. And if we have got a failure, talk about what we learned from it, and once again, going forward, what it is you've improved as a result of that failure.
The key is to turn what is a potentially negative type answer into a positive answer.
If somebody says to me that they're not that great on the phone, but they found this fantastic course on the internet and they've been doing it for 3 months and it's just so much better, that just gives me confidence, so that if we come across challenges during the time they're employed, they're prepared to do what it takes to make that situation better.
You know, the answer itself isn't actually that important. It's how you answer it rather than what you say.
So if somebody says to you, what have you been criticised for in the past, for example, then you might turn around to them and say, well, I am really impatient. I do get criticised for being really impatient, and sometimes I get criticised for trying to do things too quickly. And that's really because my enthusiasm sometimes just gets the better of me, and I'm really focused on results. And however we get there, it doesn't really matter too much as long as we do get there.
Maybe think of several more than you think they will ask you for, because some companies will try and catch you out in recognising that you have planned for the first one or two, and they will keep asking.
Some people accuse me of being very pernickety, because I do like to cross every T and dot every I, but that's because I think it's really important. You know, attention to detail is important these days. So I don't apologise for that, it's just I think it's a very professional way of working, but I have been criticised for that in the past by some people who don't think it's so important.
If that person, if the interviewer is just rabbiting on and just talking on and on and on, and you're thinking, geez, I haven't got time, time's running out, I need to speak. Good. You've got to speak. Don't be nice. Don't let them rabbit on and just nod your head, because at the end of the day, they'll carry on talking, feeling great about themselves, and suddenly it's time to go, and they thought, oh, you didn't say much. It's not their fault, it's your fault for not asking the questions, okay? So, for example, let's say they're rabbiting on about something, and you're thinking, gee, I need to know something. You could say something like, absolutely great. Just interrupt, be energetic, I really got that point, I really resonate with that. And this is an experience I had. Suddenly you're back in the game.
If someone has a gap in their CV and they haven't filled it in, so to speak, I'll always ask the question, well, where were you? What happened then? And I think honesty is the best policy. You'll quite often find in lots of industries that everybody knows everybody else. So if you've been fired from somewhere, I'll find out, because I'll have friends who will know you somewhere. So I think come clean and say. Now, I've been made redundant. It's one of those things, it's part of working life. You
could be honest and say, well, I thought I'd walk into something like X, but it didn't work out that way. You know, and at the end of the day I was wrong. And if you throw your hands up and admit you're wrong, people have more respect for you than if you try and lie your way through it. So the key to it is to be honest. In terms of qualifications, I'm pretty open-minded, but if you haven't got a university degree, there are plenty of other ways of improving your qualifications, such as membership of professional bodies, part-time study, things like that. So if someone sends me a CV, they've come straight out of school into work, and then a few years later they've gone back and done some studying after hours, etc., I think that's great. So what an interviewer might do, he will ask you a question, and you will have responded to that question, and suddenly there's a silence. How you respond to that silence
is really critical moving forward. Now, my advice to you would be something like either stay silent and smile, but more seriously, I would suggest what you do is say something like, has that answered your question? Is what I've said clear? Put it back on them. Put the question back. It's respectful, it breaks the silence, and it gets you back in control. Don't ever try and handle silence by carrying on talking, because it'll turn into waffle.
One of the trickiest areas of the interview is where people get stuck in talking about negatives. And those negatives normally come up from the question, why have you left your last job? Why are you looking for a move now?
Making sure that you paint your current employer in a positive light, and if it's the case of they can't offer you prospects anymore, then there's nothing wrong with saying that in an interview if that's what you want out of life. If a company can't offer you what you want, there's nothing wrong with moving on. But for you to sit there and slag them off would not look very good at all.
People look to how you talk about others as to how potentially you're going to talk about them.
So, when people ask you why you left, what was wrong with your previous job, try and look at it on a positive side and prepare your answer to talk positively about not why you're leaving a company, but actually what opportunity you're looking for next, or what else presented itself after that job and why you made that change. It's a minefield, and if you want to spend an hour in a meeting talking about your old boss and getting yourself into deeper and deeper trouble, go ahead, but you won't get the job.
Another thing you need to be very careful about is if the interviewer starts swearing. Now please don't think you can mirror that. The amount of times I have my clients saying to me that they couldn't believe how many times the person swore in the interview, when I talk to my candidate about it, they say all I was doing was mirroring them.
An interviewer may make some comments or make some suggestions which you may find either inappropriate or you think that they've overstepped the mark. In those instances, you should make sure that you get across politely that you think that that's incorrect or they've overstepped the mark, and make be constructive as you can about it. But make sure that you stand your ground and that you are true to what you're thinking and what you believe.
If you're not clear on the question, go back to them and say, excuse me, I didn't quite understand what you're saying. Could you just repeat that, or could you just clarify, do I understand what you mean by this is da-da? It's okay to do that. And it's even okay in situations where someone asks you a really smart question. It's absolutely okay to say, I don't know. I'm sorry, I can't answer that question. I haven't got a clue, or whatever it is. Don't make things up. Don't try and blag your way through an interview. You'll get caught out.